Children, I hope you have gone through my previous videos and done all the work that was assigned to you. Let us now proceed further. Children, we are going to start a new chapter today, surface chemistry. Now, surface chemistry, it is the study of chemical processes which occur at the interface between a solid and a gas, or a solid and solute in solution. Now, this does not occur in this sort of an interface does not exist in case of gases. Now, first among that is adsorption. Adsorption, it is the phenomena of assimilation, collection of higher concentration of any species at the surface of a solid or liquid as compared to that present in the bulk of material. So on the surface there is a high concentration, and in the bulk the concentration is low. So this is known as adsorption. The solid or liquid on whose surface gas or liquid is adsorbed is called adsorbent or substrate, and the gas or solution which is held on the surface, it is called as adsorbate. Now the adsorbent must be a condensed phase, that is liquid or solid, and the adsorbate is atomic, ionic or molecular in nature. So generally it is a liquid or a gas. Now you can remove the adsorbed substance from the surface. This process is called as desorption. It is the opposite of adsorption. Desorption is removal of adsorbed substance from the surface, and it occurs when concentration of the pressure of substance in bulk is lowered. Adsorption, it is a surface phenomena, but absorption, absorption, it is a bulk phenomena. In absorption, the concentration of molecular species is uniformly distributed throughout the body of solid or liquid, whereas in adsorption, like I told you, the concentration is more on the surface and less in the remaining. So it is absorption is relatively slower than adsorption, and the attainment of equilibrium takes longer time in absorption. For example, ammonia is absorbed in water, but it is adsorbed on charcoal. That means in the water, ammonia is present in the whole of the water equally, but in case of charcoal, ammonia concentration will be high on the surface of charcoal rather than inside the charcoal. So this simultaneous phenomena of adsorption and absorption, it is known as sorption, sorption. Now the phenomena of adsorption occurs due to presence of unbalanced or residual forces at the solid or liquid surface. Adsorption reduces the residual forces by attracting the molecules at the surface, and this results in a decrease in surface energy. It appears in the form of heat, and this is exothermic process. So the phenomena of adsorption is spontaneous due to negative free energy, delta G. Free energy is represented by delta G, so it is negative. Delta G of the system, as delta H is negative, is sufficiently higher than delta S is equal to positive. So therefore in the expression of free energy, delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. This is the expression of free energy. So in this, delta G becomes negative because delta H is negative and delta S is positive. Okay. Now we come to types of adsorption. Adsorption is classified on the basis of forces of attraction into two types, physisorption and chemisorption. Now let us see what is the difference between the two, physisorption and chemisorption. In physisorption, forces of attraction between adsorbent and adsorbate are weak. They are van der Waals forces. Whereas in case of chemisorption, chemical bonds are formed between adsorbent and adsorbate. In physisorption, no formation of surface complex takes place, but in chemisorption, formation of surface complex takes place between adsorbate and adsorbent. Physisorption, like I told you, desorption is possible. You can remove the adsorbent from the adsorbate. So physisorption is reversible in nature, but chemisorption is irreversible in nature. Physisorption, it occurs at low temperature due to low activation energy of -5 kilojoules. Chemisorption needs high temperature due to high activation energy. Magnitude of adsorption decreases with increase in temperature in case of physisorption, and magnitude of adsorption first increases with increase in temperature and then decreases. In physisorption, equilibrium is attained rapidly on changing temperature and pressure. But in chemisorption, equilibrium is attained slowly. Heat of absorption in physisorption is low, that is between 20 to 40 kilojoules per mole. But heat of absorption in case of chemisorption is high, 80 to 240 kilojoules per mole. In physisorption, the adsorption is multi-layered, but in chemisorption, it is monolayered. Physisorption is non-specific. Chemisorption is highly specific. So these are the differences between physisorption and chemisorptions, which are the two types of adsorption. Okay, so the differences can be asked. Now next we come to factors affecting adsorption from solution phase. Now solids are known to adsorb solutes from solution. So the following factors, they influence the adsorption of solutes from solution by solids. First factor is the extent of adsorption depends on nature of the adsorbent as well as adsorbate. What is the meaning of this? That the extent of adsorption is greater for solutes with high molecular mass. So if the solutes have high molecular mass, they will be adsorbed more compared to the solutes with lower molecular mass. Second is adsorption of solute decreases with rise in temperature. Third factor is the rate of adsorption increases with increase in concentration of solution. When the solute is adsorbed by adsorbent, it is called positive adsorption. Okay, whereas when the solvent is absorbed by adsorbent, it is called as negative adsorption. Like for example, if potassium chloride is adsorbed by charcoal from a concentrated solution, this will be called as positive adsorption. But if water is absorbed by charcoal from a concentrated solution of KCl, then this will be called as negative adsorption, because in this case from KCl solution, the KCl is solute and water is solvent. So in positive adsorption, the solute is being absorbed, and in negative adsorption, solvent is being adsorbed. Now the extent of adsorption increases with increase in surface area of adsorbent. More the surface area of adsorbent, more will be the adsorption. So these are the factors which affect adsorption from solution phase by solid. Next we come to catalysis. Now what is a catalyst? Catalyst is defined as a substance which changes the rate of reaction, chemical reaction, without appearing in the end product of the reaction. It enters the chemical reaction, forms complex with the reactants, then this complex decomposes to give the product, and we get back our catalyst. So catalyst is regenerated at the end, and it does not take part in product formation. It is not a product. Okay, so there are two types of catalysis. First is homogeneous catalysis and the second is heterogeneous catalysis. So let us study what is homogeneous catalysis. In this catalytic reaction, the catalyst is in same phase as the reactant. Homo means same. So the phase of catalyst and the reactant is the same. Like, see for example, 2SO2. SO2 is a gas, plus O2. O2 is also a gas, and NO. NO is the catalyst in this case, and the phase is gaseous phase, and it forms 2SO3, which is again a gas. So everything is in gaseous state. This is homogeneous catalysis. Heterogeneous catalysis. In this catalytic reaction, the catalyst is in different phase from the reactants. Product's phase does not make a difference. The reactant's phase. So N2 is a gas, 3H2 gas, Fe, which is being used as catalyst. Now this is solid. So this gives you 2NH3, which is again a gas. So this type of catalysis, in which the state of catalyst is different from the state of reactants, it is called as heterogeneous catalysis. Alright, now next we come to characteristics of catalyst. A catalyst remains unchanged in mass and composition at the end of reaction. Small quantity of catalyst is sufficient to catalyze the reaction. A catalyst is specific in action. For one particular reactant, there is a particular catalyst. Same catalyst cannot be used in all the reactions. Catalyst does not initiate a reaction. It only increases or decreases the speed of a reaction. It cannot start a reaction. Catalyst does not alter the position of equilibrium. Catalyst does not affect the enthalpy change delta H and gives energy delta G of the reaction. And a catalyst can only catalyze spontaneous reactions. Okay. Now next we come to effect of temperature on catalytic activity. Now in general, the rate of catalytic reaction is altered by a change in temperature in the same way as exhibited by uncatalyzed reaction. However, increase in catalytic power of a catalyst with increase in temperature is not uniform, because catalysts are physically altered by increase in temperature. So it has been found that catalytic activity of a catalyst is maximum at a particular temperature, which is known as the optimum temperature, and above that temperature the catalyst gets destroyed. So it gets, the shape gets changed and it is unable to perform its activity properly. So maximum catalysis will be at the optimum temperature. Okay. Next we come to catalytic promoter. Now a promoter is a substance which is not a catalyst for a reaction, but it increases the activity of catalyst used in the reaction. Like in Haber's process for manufacture of ammonia, a small amount of molybdenum or Al2O3 acts as a promoter. So you studied the reaction just now, N2 plus 3H2 in presence of solid iron. See this reaction? Just 1 minute, I'll show you the reaction. Like here, N2 plus 3H2 in presence of iron was giving you ammonia. Now in this case, if we add a little bit of molybdenum or Al2O3, then it will act as a promoter. Okay, so molybdenum or Al2O3 is not the catalyst, but what it is doing, it is increasing the activity of catalyst iron. So a promoter increases the free valencies It increases the peaks and cracks on the surface of the catalyst and the free valencies which are available for reaction. So thus the concentration of reactants increases at the surface of the catalyst. Next term is catalytic poison. Just like you have catalytic promoter, there is catalytic poison. It is a foreign substance which makes the catalyst ineffective. Poisons are generally effective in heterogeneous catalysis. Now, sulfur or quinoline is a poison in Rosenmund reaction. Arsenic oxide is poison in contact process for manufacture of H2SO4. Iron, the catalyst in Haber's process, is poisoned by H2S. Just now you studied that for Haber's process, molybdenum and Al2O3 they act as promoters, but if in place of that you add H2S, so it will act as catalytic poison. Iron catalyst which is used in oxidation of hydrogen, it is poisoned by carbon monoxide. So the poisoning of catalyst is due to preferential adsorption of poison on the surface of the catalyst. So when the surface of catalyst will adsorb catalytic poison, then this will reduce the surface of catalyst and therefore free valencies. So in some cases catalyst also reacts with the poison and forms another compound. So now it's not available to react with the adsorbent. Okay. So there are a few theories on catalysis. Next we will study about them only. The theory of theories of catalysis. Just a second. The first theory is intermediate compound formation theory. This theory is applicable for explaining the phenomena of homogeneous catalysis. Now, according to this theory, one of the reactants combines with catalyst to form an intermediate, which again combines with another reactant to form the product and regenerates the catalysis. For example, you can see here NO is a catalyst. It combines with half O2 to give you an intermediate NO2. Alright. Now then this NO2, which is an intermediate, combines with SO2 to give you the product SO3 plus NO. NO again was the catalyst. So you regain your catalyst. So this is called as intermediate compound formation theory, in which an intermediate compound is formed. In this case it is NO2, which forms the product and regenerates the catalyst. Second theory is adsorption theory or contact catalysis. This is for heterogeneous catalysis. Now in this you see C2H4 and hydrogen, they are both gases. They combine together in presence of nickel. Nickel is solid, so this is a heterogeneous catalysis to give you C2H6. Okay, now according to this theory, the surface of catalyst has a large number of unsatisfied free valencies or active centers which undergo loose chemical reaction with the chemical combination with the reactant molecules. Number of active centers can be increased if catalyst is taken in powdered form or in broken form. So, if the catalyst has large number of peaks, edges, cracks, etc., then it will have that many active sites. Now, the reactant molecules adsorb at the surface of catalyst with the help of formation of weak van der Waals forces of attraction. Now, because the adsorption is exothermic phenomena, liberation of heat breaks the reactant molecules to convert them into atoms Therefore, energy of molecules becomes less and the activation energy is also decreased, and the reactant atom combines with adjacent molecule of another reactant to form activated complex, which combines with another atom to form the product. Now when the product is formed, the product molecules leave the surface and the catalyst, making them ready for further reaction. So this is the adsorption theory. 4 steps are involved. First is surface of catalyst has large number of free valencies. Okay, and these free valencies, they can be increased if catalyst is taken in powdered form. Second thing you have to remember is that the reactant molecules, they adsorb at the surface of catalyst by weak van der Waals forces. Third point is that because adsorption is exothermic and heat is liberated, this liberated heat breaks the reactant molecules to convert them into atoms. When they are converted into atoms, their activation energy and the energy of molecule, it gets decreased, and the reactant atom combines with adjacent molecules to form activated complex, which combines with another atom to form the product. And when the product is formed, fourth point, when the product is formed, the product molecule leaves the surface of catalyst, making them ready for further reaction. So this is the adsorption theory. Okay, first they get adsorbed on the catalyst, then when the activated complex is formed, they get released and the catalyst is free to undergo further reaction. So this is, next is shape selective catalysis by zeolite. Now the catalytic reaction, which depends upon the pore structure of catalyst and the size of reactant and product molecule, is called shape selective catalysis. For example, zeolite catalyst ZSM5 converts alcohols to gasoline. The reaction in zeolite depends upon the size of cavities and pores present in them, which can allow the entry and exit of molecules of certain size into the active region within the hole. Therefore, selectivity of catalyst depends on pore structure. The most remarkable feature of zeolite catalyst is the shape selectivity, because in that hole only a specific type of shape, if that will be allowed to enter. So it is shape selective catalysis. If the shape is different from the hole, they will not be able to enter the catalyst. So this is shape selective catalysis by zeolites. Now next we come to the topic colloids. Now the word colloid means dispersion in which dispersed particles are larger than the solute ions or molecules of a true solution and smaller than that of mechanical suspension. Now size of colloidal particles ranges from 1 nanometer 10 to power minus 7 centimeter to 1000 nm, that is 10 to power minus 4 centimeter. Colloidal particles have very large surface area per unit mass as result of their small size. What is the meaning of this? See, in which particles they are larger than the true solution and smaller than suspension. So in between the true solution and suspension come the colloidal particles. Now classification of colloids, it is that classified in 3 ways. First is on the basis of physical state of dispersed phase and dispersion medium. Now in this category there are 8 types. Now if the dispersed phase is solid and it is dispersed in a medium which is also solid, then the type of colloidal system will be called as solid sol, Example is like colored glasses, gems, stones. Okay, when dispersed phase is solid but it is dispersed in the medium which is liquid, then it will be called as, type of colloidal system will be sol, like in paints, cell fluids. Then if dispersed phase is solid and the dispersion medium is gas, then it will be called as aerosol. Smoke, dust, they come in this category. If the dispersed phase is liquid and dispersion medium is solid, then this colloidal system is called as, when liquid is mixed in solid, it is called as gel. Example, cheese, butter, jellies. When both dispersed phase and dispersion medium are liquid, then it is called emulsion, like milk, hair cream. Okay, they are all emulsions, hair cream and milk. When dispersed phase is liquid and dispersion medium is gas, it is called aerosol. For example, fog, mist, cloud. Okay. So liquid is mixed in gas. When the dispersed phase is gas and the dispersion medium is solid, then it is called solid sol, like pumic stone, foam, rubber. Seen in foam can be squeezed. Why? Because in between the air is present. If dispersed phase is gas and dispersion medium is liquid, then it is called foam, झाग जो होता है, froth, whipped cream, soap, lather. These are the examples. So this is on the basis of physical state, whether they are solid, liquid or gas, of dispersed phase and dispersion medium. Now next classification is on the basis of nature of interaction between dispersed phase and dispersion medium. According to this, they are divided into two types: lyophilic sols and lyophobic sols. So let us see what is the difference between lyophilic and lyophobic. These are the two types. So see, lyophilic sols, they are easily formed by direct mixing. But lyophobic, philic का मतलब होता है loving and phobic means fear. So lyophobic do not dissolve easily, so they are prepared by special methods only. They are lyophilic sols because they are dissolved easily in the solution, solvent, so they are very stable. But lyophobic sols, they are easily precipitated by addition of small amount of electrolyte. Then lyophilic sols, they are highly hydrated because they dissolve, so they absorb lot of water. But lyophobic sols are not much hydrated. Lyophilic sols can be reversed back, but lyophobic sols are irreversible. In lyophilic sols, the particles do not carry any charge, but in lyophobic sols, the particles carry charge. For lyophilic sol, the viscosity is much higher than that of dispersion medium, but for lyophobic sols, the viscosity is nearly the same as that of dispersion medium. In lyophilic sols, the surface tension is lower than the surface tension of dispersion medium, but for lyophobic sols, the surface tension is same as that of dispersion medium. Lyophilic sols do not show Tyndall effect, and lyophobic sols, they show Tyndall effect. We will be studying about what is Tyndall effect in detail in the next video. Okay, for right now you just remember this, that lyophilic do not show Tyndall effect and lyophobic show Tyndall effect. So in the exam, generally differences are asked between lyophilic and lyophobic sols. So you should be able to do that. Next is classification on the basis of types of particles of dispersed phase. So in this, the first one minute, let me take this to the other page so that we have it all together. Yes, on the basis of types of particles of dispersed phase. So there are three categories in this. First is multimolecular colloid. On dissolution, a large number of atoms or smaller molecules of substance aggregate to form particles of colloidal size whose diameter is less than 1 nm. For example, sol of sulfur containing S8 molecules, sol of aggregated As2S3 molecules, gold sol, etc. They have lyophobic character. Okay. Next is multimolecular, means there are more than one molecule which is present. Large number of atoms are present of different substances. Next is macromolecular colloid. If individual particles of dispersed phase have dimensions similar to colloidal size, the dispersion is called macromolecular colloid. For example, protein enzymes, cellulose, rubber, polyethylene, polystyrene. So they all have lyophilic character. And the third category is of associated colloids. In this colloid, the dispersed phase behaves as regular electrolytes at lower concentration, but aggregate at high concentration to form particles of colloidal dimensions called micelles. That means when they are at low concentration, they behave as electrolytes, but if their concentration is increased, then they aggregate and they form micelles. So Kraft temperature Tk is the temperature above which micelle formation takes place, and critical micelle concentration CMC is the concentration at which micelle formation takes place. Now this normally takes place in case of soap or detergent in water, and their molecules, they contain both lyophilic and lyophobic group. Now mechanism of micelle formation, we will do it tomorrow in our next video. For now, you just be content with this much and revise what has been taught today.